Number 1.
Johnnie Joe Herrera, age 20, disappeared from Oxnard, California on August 27, 1971. He was last known to have been at a friend's bachelor party in the 700 block of West Cedar Street in Oxnard. Neither Johnny nor his car have been seen since, except for an unconfirmed sighting at a nearby McDonald's. At the time of his disappearance, he was married and had a 10-month-old son. He was eventually reported missing by his twin brother, 5 days after he was last seen. There is no evidence that his case was thoroughly investigated or publicized at the time. Oxnard newspapers from that time period are archived online, but there is no mention of him to be found. Details are still sketchy, although multiple theories have been presented by those interested in the case. One theory is that he left of his own accord, feeling trapped by the responsibilities of fatherhood and marriage. Although his family stated in a newspaper article that Johnny appeared to be happy, it has been speculated by someone involved with the case that Johnny and his wife may have been experiencing marital and/or financial problems. Another theory is that he became intoxicated at the bachelor party and accidentally drove into a ravine or other body of water after leaving the party. It's worth noting that both of the above theories exist mainly as possible explanations for why his car has never been found. It has further been theorized that an altercation or overdose of some sort may have occurred at the party, which resulted in his death. This theory comes into play due to the fact that it has never been reported that anyone saw him leave the party, just that he was seen at the party. Then, of course, there is the serial killer theory. Randy Kraft was known to prey on young men in Southern California beginning in 1972. He has been nicknamed the Scorecard Killer, as he kept a list of 61 terms and phrases that are believed to represent his victims. The terms are not dated, except in cases where law enforcement have connected his list entries to actual victims. They are not in chronological order. Ironically, there is an entry of Oxnard that has not been connected to a specific victim. Of the 61 terms on the scorecard, 43 have been matched to actual victims by law enforcement. Each of the 43 that have been matched have been found deceased, which leads me to believe that only unsolved homicides were used to compare with a list, and missing persons were not taken into account. Therefore, I find it likely that the remaining unmatched cases are those of missing persons. I was able to locate one missing male with ties to Oxnard between 1963 and 2000. His name is Johnnie Joe Herrera. One thing, however, does cast doubt on the theory of Herrera being a Kraft victim. All 43 matched victims of Kraft, unless I overlooked anything, were located in plain sight. Mostly in parking lots, on the side of roads, and the like. It didn't seem to be his mo to hide his victims. That said, I would expect to see potential matches for Herrera in the unidentifieds if he were a victim of Kraft, because it stands to reason that he'd have been found rather quickly. But I don't see any. The theory of a Kraft victim also begs the question, where is the car? Another possible serial killer connection that has been mentioned is Patrick Kearney. He also was active in the area, although he seemed to have a tendency toward gay young men that he could lure into his home or car by turning on the charm. He did pick up hitchhikers and transients occasionally, however I don't see Johnny falling into this trap. He had a family to get home to. I don't think he would have appeared vulnerable enough for Kearney's taste. That, of course, is just my own opinion. One of the members of Websleuths has been relentless in trying to get attention on this case, which has, for 42 years now, been virtually unknown to the society at large. If you are interested in this case and would like to help get the word out, you are encouraged to check out this list of media contacts and request them to feature his case. Johnny, please come home.
Number 2.
Patricia Ann Adkins, age 29, went missing from Marysville, Ohio on June 29, 2001. Patricia, commonly known as Patty, was last seen when she left the Honda plant where she worked an evening shift, seconds after midnight. The plant would be closed for the following week in observance of the 4th of July holiday. Patty told her family and friends that she would be going on a trip to an unknown location, though likely a remote part of Canada, with a married male co-worker that she was romantically involved with. Prior to leaving for work that afternoon, she made arrangements for the care of her daughter and pets. She packed a duffel bag. She got a ride to work from a friend, as she and her co-worker were to leave for their trip directly from work. When Patty did not return from her trip as scheduled and her family began searching for her, a string of convoluted inconsistencies began to develop. The first thing Patty's family did was contact the co-worker. Patty's sister began to panic when the co-worker acted confused as to who exactly Patty was and claimed he knew nothing about a trip. Now at a heightened level of concern, they contacted Patty's friend who had driven her to work on the afternoon of June 29. She revealed additional details that Patty had told her about her plans. Patty had said that the co-worker had told her that there would be no phone service where they were going, so her family should not expect to hear from her. He'd also told her that she should not bring anything, because they could buy everything they needed when they got there. Patty had confessed to her friend, however, that she didn't completely follow those instructions. She did, indeed, pack a small duffel bag with, among other things, something blue, his favorite color, from Victoria's Secret. It also came to light that Patty had been told that she'd need to hide in the bed of his pickup truck until he dropped another co-worker off at home. Hearing these bizarre accounts, of course, sent red flags flying everywhere. The police were contacted. Upon further investigation, it was found that Patty had loaned this co-worker tens of thousands of dollars, wiping out savings accounts and dipping into her 401k. She was led to believe that this co-worker planned to leave his wife and that he and Patty would then become a couple, but that he would need funds to buy out her share of the family business before he could leave her. The 401k loans Patty took out were due, and Patty had told her co-worker that he would need to start paying back the loans soon. This conversation took place only weeks before he mentioned the idea of going on a trip. Upon confrontation by police, he claimed that he worked with Patty, barely knew her, and added that he'd floated her money for lunch a couple times. He and his wife both adamantly denied that there was any affair going on. While police were at the residence speaking to him, they noticed a freshly poured area of concrete. It was dug up, but nothing was found. They also discovered a new-looking bed cover for his truck. It was found that he'd purchased this cover only days prior to the supposed trip. He explained to police that he purchased it to cover fishing equipment. Inspection of this cover revealed cat hair and a tiny speck of blood. The cat hair was positively matched to Patty's cat by her veterinarian. The speck of blood is still pending testing. When asked about his whereabouts on the night in question, he explained that he and his male co-worker had left the plant, driven approximately 30 miles toward their homes, and decided to stop at Burger King. He said they waited in line for 45 minutes, got their food, and then he dropped his buddy off and went home. His wife stated that he had arrived home at approximately 2:30 a.m., which is the usual time he would arrive home from work. His commuting buddy backed up his statement that they had gone to Burger King and waited 45 minutes. The manager of Burger King told police that there was no way they waited 45 minutes, as they are never busy in the wee hours of the morning. The married co-worker, whose name has not been officially released, has been named a person of interest by law enforcement. I think the waited 45 minutes at Burger King statement is the most useful. If he did indeed harm her, I don't think 45 minutes was a random number, but rather, the amount of time he needed to account for. There are several possible scenarios, considering that we know she was in the truck, based on her cat's hairs found on the newly purchased bed cover. A. The co-worker left the Honda plant alone, with Patty waiting in the truck bed, and his buddy was asked to cover for him, while they hooked up by saying they'd been at Burger King. B. His buddy was dropped off at home, with Patty still in the truck bed and covered for his friend, by saying they went to Burger King. C. The co-worker left the plant with his buddy, and with Patty hiding in the back, and both the co-worker and his buddy had a part in harming her. D. She somehow suffocated while hiding in the covered bed, and he felt he couldn't report it without admitting to the affair. I don't think C. is particularly plausible, as his buddy had no motive or reason to get involved in something like this, even though his statement that they waited at Burger King for 45 minutes was not considered to be truthful. B. makes the most sense to me. If scenario B were what actually happened, the timeline would have gone something like this. 12 a.m. Patty clocks out and goes to his truck and hides in the bed. 12:15 a.m. Co-worker comes out with his buddy, they get in the truck and start driving. 1 a.m. Buddy is dropped off and truck pulls away. 1:05 a.m. Truck pulls over so Patty can get into the cab. 1:05 a.m. 2 a.m. Drives to someplace, act is committed. 2:30 a.m. Co-worker arrives at his own home. Based on this hypothetical scenario, I don't think Patty would be more than 30 minutes away from his buddy's home. In all fairness, Patty's co-worker has not been convicted of a crime, and he is innocent until proven guilty. So I'd like to explore a couple possible scenarios in which he is innocent. It is worth noting, however, that every scenario I can think of that meet this criteria would be one in which he lied when he said there was no affair and that no trip was planned. The theory of I don't know anything about a trip, I hardly know the girl does not pan out due to the loans, the cat hair in the truck, the fact that Patty herself had told multiple people about the relationship, the newly purchased bed cover being discovered after Patty had told others that she would be hiding in the bed. It could be possible that a trip was planned and that Patty hid in the bed while he took his buddy home and somehow ended up suffocating. He could have discovered her after dropping off his friend, panicked, and buried her somewhere. I do not know exactly what type of cover it was or if there would have been sufficient ventilation. It could be possible that a trip was planned and after Patty got into the cab, an argument ensued and Patty got out of the car. I'm looking forward to the day when they can test the speck of blood found on the bed cover. It is apparently a speck similar to one that would be found with a squished mosquito, and therefore there is only one opportunity to test it without the dna being destroyed. So, they are waiting for further technology advances. Patty's duffel bag has not been found.
Number 3.
Vicke Lee Lamberton, age 24, disappeared from Worcester, Massachusetts in February 1974. Vicke had been separated from her husband, Lowell Lamberton, for about a month and had indicated that she was interested in reconciling. They planned a nice dinner, but Vicke never showed up and was never seen or heard from again. Attention quickly turned to Dr. Roger Barker, one of her college professors at Assumption College. Although he was married, her family suspected she was involved in a romantic relationship with him. Friends of Vicke's also stated that they were aware of the affair and that she had planned on marrying him. Vicke had been seen by her brother with Barker in a mall, and Barker had accompanied her to New York in the past. When authorities went to the college to question Barker, they learned that he had been in Vail, Co. on a ski trip at the time Vicke went missing. It was later discovered that Vicke had told her estranged husband that she was going to Maine with a girlfriend and would meet him for dinner when she returned. The girlfriend was questioned and said she had not heard from Vicke in some time and they had not made any plans to go anywhere. The theory was that Vicke had actually gone to Colorado to be with Barker. Barker had only planned to stay in Vail for the weekend but had been hospitalized with pneumonia and ended up staying there for 2 weeks. His wife, however, returned to Worcester after the initial weekend. When Vicke's family was finally able to talk to Barker, he stated that he hardly knew Vicke, although her belongings were stored in his garage. He staunchly denied that any relationship existed. He suggested that he'd simply helped a student move out of her husband's home and allowed her to store her belongings in his garage. While many believe she may have landed in harm's way as a result of the extramarital affair, some, including her former husband, believe she is still alive. Lowell Lamberton told reporters that Vicke had commented about wanting to go somewhere where nobody knew who she was and that she'd considered dyeing her skin to appear African American. He said that she often told people she was from Colorado and may have been ashamed of her Kansas wheat farm upbringing. Sometime after her disappearance, a neighbor of the Kansas family farm received an odd phone call from someone trying to reach Vicke's family, who had moved to Texas by that time. They also asked for Mr. Lamberton's, Vicke's estranged husband, phone number and said that Vicke had gone to Europe. A check with Interpol did not turn up any record of Vicke traveling to Europe, however. There was another ray of hope when Mr. Lamberton received an acceptance letter to New York University, addressed to Vicke. Whether or not she actually enrolled has not been verified. Her social security number has not been used since 1974. A few things jump out at me that are missing from this investigation. If Barker was hospitalized in Vail with pneumonia and Vicke were there, surely she would have spent time at the hospital and would have been seen there by nurses. Or it could be that he did not actually have pneumonia and used that excuse to stay in Vail with Vicke. It's unlikely that Vicke drove from Worcester, to Vail, Co. alone, which would lead one to believe that she flew there, in which case there would be a record of her as a passenger. According to Vicke's brother, she had no income at the time of her disappearance and was reliant on Barker for financial support. It doesn't seem too difficult to determine if she ever was in Colorado. That would be a good start. At least, then it could be updated to reflect that she went missing from Vail and not from Worcester. It's clear across the country it makes a big difference. Decades after Vicke's disappearance, Anne, an old friend and neighbor of Vicke's, contacted police, and it's believed she was the last person to speak with Vicke before she disappeared. She stated that Vicke had told her she was going to Colorado with Barker. Anne stated that Vicke had another acquaintance that was a professor. Police spoke with him, and he is living in another state now and did not know Vicke was missing. He is not believed to have any involvement in her disappearance. Although the article describes this professor as an acquaintance, reading between the lines, I believe he was a romantic interest. I say this because Vicke was a college student. She would have several professors that would qualify as acquaintances. In fact, her husband had once been her professor at Union College in Nebraska. Yet, they singled out this one, who was not named in the article.
Number 4.
Karen Lynn Zendrosky, age 16, went missing from Bordentown Township, New Jersey, on October 23, 1979. She was last seen at a local bowling alley in the evening hours. She reportedly went to a water control plant with 2 or 3 men in their 20s, but it is not known if she went willingly or against her will. The area was frequently used as a party spot back then. Tips have come forward in the years since her disappearance, directing law enforcement to a sludge pit in the vicinity of the water plant. A search was done over several days, thanks to the wonderful people at J. Fletcher Creamer and Son, who volunteered their time and equipment to isolate and empty specific areas of interest in the sludge pits. Investigators stated that due to the lack of oxygen needed for decomposition, it was likely that her remains could be found intact, along with items such as zippers and buttons. The search turned up shotgun shells, plastic wrappers, and assorted litter. Investigators said the items were identifiable and well preserved, and they were optimistic about finding her remains equally well preserved. The 102 areas of the pit that were searched did not yield a body, and no further searching has been done. I still think she's there. I still think she can be found. I think she needs to be found. According to ABC News, investigators have a good idea of who was responsible for her disappearance and stated they intend to prosecute these individuals if sufficient evidence can be found. Newspaper articles indicated that investigators are still seeking information on her disappearance, which initially frustrated me because they've already talked to the people who were there at the water plant that night. They've been told that she was killed in the wooded area and then dumped into the sludge pit, and they admit they know who was likely involved. It seems as though they haven't completely searched the sludge pit, so I felt as though their plea for more tips wouldn't really be taken seriously. The only people who could tell investigators exactly where in the pit to find her are the same people investigators have already talked to. To their credit, however, they are a small town, and apparently each area they search costs approximately $250,000. I do understand that Bordentown probably doesn't have the resources, without taking away from other crimes that are equally in need of their attention. Due to the hazardous nature of dealing with the sludge, I'd guess it isn't something that random volunteers can assist with. That's unfortunate, as I'm sure there'd be hundreds of willing searchers. There's got to be some way that this search can continue so the Karen can be brought home. Any self-employed hazmat vacuum truck operators out there that might be willing to volunteer their services so we can bring this lovely girl home.
Number 5.
Linda Rose Grimm, age 25, went missing from Paris, California on March 31, 1986. She had left her residence to purchase a pack of cigarettes and never returned. Linda's mother heard from her periodically over the next 18 months. She said she was living on a farm in Wichita, Kansas, was doing well and getting her life back together. Linda's mother stated that Linda sounded fearful and would not disclose exactly where she was. The last call from Linda was in October 1987. Her whereabouts at that time are unknown. Linda's family suspects that Linda may have traveled with a truck driver by the name of Robert Masters and may have even gone by the alias Linda Masters. It is also believed that Linda had friends in Huntington Beach, California, and that she was with them at some point after her disappearance. Linda's car, a yellow Ford Pinto, was found in a supermarket parking lot on Beach Boulevard in Huntington Beach in April 1989. Linda was married at the time of her disappearance. This is another case that just doesn't seem all that difficult to make progress on. I mean, how many Robert Masters with commercial driver's licenses could there have been in 1986? And if she is believed to have traveled to Kansas with him, it could be narrowed down to ones who had ties to Wichita, Kansas. Have they spoken to Robert Masters to see when he last saw her, or is this another she's free to disappear as she pleases cases in spite of her sounding fearful and her car being found 3 years later? I also find it strange that her car was found 3 years later, not terribly far from her home. It obviously hadn't been sitting there for 3 years, so somebody had to be driving it. Hopefully, it was her, given that she is believed to have friends in Huntington Beach. It still wouldn't make sense for her to abandon it in a supermarket parking lot, but it could at least establish that she was alive and well up until April of 1989, and that she'd more than likely be found in California as opposed to Kansas. I'd hope that there were surveillance cameras nearby that could determine whether she parked the car there, and if not, who did. I get the impression that Linda's family struggled with trying to get attention directed at Linda's disappearance. The only newspaper item I could find was an ad that was taken out in the Orange County Register by Linda's mother. No unidentifieds are jumping out at me, either in California or Kansas. There are only a total of 6 female unidentifieds listed on NamUs for Kansas, which either means they have amazing medical examiners or that there are many remains that aren't listed. I hope Linda finds her way home soon.